Whoa! I love those guys. That is Distant Cousins singing their song, I'm on my way. We are on our way, getting the week started nicely with some beautiful Torah study on a Sunday evening. The Thanksgiving Day weekend is winding down, but the time for giving thanks never ends. Let's light up the darkness. Who is going to be with us as we get started? We got a great page. This is a really good daf. Why don't I just say where we are right now? We are in the fourth tractate of the Talmud, tractate Pesachim, daf ches, that's page 8. We're in chapter 1, and tonight we're finally completing our discussion of the first Mishna of chapter 1, and there's some beautiful teachings on this page, as you may have already guessed from the title of tonight's show. The candle of God is the soul of a person. Who's with us tonight? Yehudit Sobel from Florence, South Carolina, Stephen from New Hampshire, Melissa from Great Neck, Paula from Chicago, James says shalom from Indianapolis, John with us from Sedona, Monica from San Luis Obispo, Harold and Loretta from Roseburg, Oregon, Linda from Tampa, Lucy from Minnesota, Regina from New York, Dennis with us from Honolulu in Hawaii, Patty from the Jersey Shore, Nancy in rainy Southern Pines, North Carolina, Irdiancia says shalom. I've seen your name before. Are you tuning in? Was it maybe from Turkey? Where are you tuning in from, Irdiancia? Gail with us and saying grateful for your teaching. Peter with us from Arlington, Vermont. And over there on the YouTube side, Deborah is saying shalom. Lynn with us from North Texas. It's candle time, she says. And Shira also with us from Texas in Dallas. Bill says, shalom, today is my religious traditions new year. So from my family to all of you, have a wonderful year. Beautiful. And may you have a wonderful and blessed year, Bill. Also, Sheila from Montana and Betty from Oklahoma. Welcome, everybody. Tonight's show is dedicated, our learning tonight is dedicated by Chaim Burke in honor of the wedding anniversary on this Hebrew date, the 14th of the Hebrew month of Kislev. Chaim and Chana Rivka Burke got married on this day. May the two of you enjoy so much nachas, so much happiness and joy from yourselves and all your loved ones. May you give all your loved ones nachas. May you receive nachas from them. And may you be learning together and enjoying life together with meaning and joy and great health and peace to 120. We all bless you as you bless us by dedicating tonight's episode of AT Daily. If anybody out there would like to dedicate an episode, dedicate their learning, you can dedicate one night's learning in honor of someone, in memory of someone, to the healing of someone. Whenever you give to a charity, to a nonprofit like ours that promotes Torah learning around the world, your giving has tremendous impact and rebounds to you with tremendous merit, both in this world and in the world to come. And what's really beautiful also is that this is one of the few ways where we can do something for a soul that's also departed this world. When we say in memory of someone, we dedicate our learning in memory of someone. So, sort of like the Jewish idea of the afterlife isn't just, plus minus, top, bottom, heaven or hell. There's an infinite number of levels that you can enter into and proceed along once you return to the world of souls. And really, based on all of your mitzvah and good deed type accomplishments in this world. But once you've left this world, so you can't do mitzvahs anymore. But if people do mitzvahs in your honor, in your memory, if they're dedicating Torah learning in your honor, in your memory, then that soul in the next world gets a little extra elevation within that world. It's a wonderful thing to do in honor of the dearly departed. Okay. As I mentioned, we are on page 8, Pesachim, page 8, the 4th volume of the Talmud. So this Mishna, the first Mishna of Pesachim, the laws of Passover, as we've been discussing, is about searching out leaven on the night of the 14th of the Hebrew month of Nisan. The following night, the 15th of Nisan, is when Passover begins. But the previous night, we search out the chametz, the leaven in our homes, any leavened products. The classic leavened product, of course, is bread. But really, any wheat product is capable of becoming leavened if it's mixed with water. And so we really clear out a lot of food products as Passover comes along. On the night of the 14th, we search our homes. We've probably already done a major spring cleaning to make sure. But now we're really going to check out all the rooms and all the nooks and crannies of our house. Well, not all the rooms, as we'll discuss. And we're going to do that by candlelight, right? It says in the Mishnah that when we search for chametz in our homes on the 14th of Nisan, we do so by candlelight, by the light of a candle. So tonight we're going to be discussing why. Why the light of a candle? Why is it so important to do that by the light of a candle? So first, where do we get this? First, not just so why, it's just why do we use a candle? First, it's sort of two separate questions. Where do the rabbis derive in Scripture that one should use a candle? Now, the word that's used in the Mishnah and in Scripture is a ner, right? So in English, we might spell that N-E-R, but it's a Hebrew word, a ner. Now, this can be translated in a few different ways. Often it's translated as candle. It could also be the flame, right? It could be the flame itself. Or a lamp, right? So in the Koran Talmud, they're translating it as a lamp. In other places, it's translated as a candle. As we'll see in a line from Proverbs, often translated into English as candle. But it's this idea, right? This solitary, steady, lovely, light, right? But like a single pointed light. And that is a ner. So we're going to have two ideas here. First, on the sort of spiritual side, where do they get in Scripture that when we search out chametz in our homes, it should be by the light of a ner? And what is the practical ramification of that? So first, let's go on the spiritual side. So where in Scripture is it derived that when we search out the chametz, it should be done by the light of a ner, right? A candle flame, a lamp, as variously it may be translated. So Rav Chisda tells us that there's no direct reference to searching out chametz by the light of a candle in the Torah, but we can make a very rabbinic type of linkage between the words search, find, and ner, and this lamplight, this candlelight. So we're going to just link a few verses together, and that's going to bring us from searching to searching by the light of a candle. So let's actually read that here in the Koran Talmud. So the Gemara cites the relevant verses included in the above derivation. Finding in one context, finding, right? So we're going to go from searching. On the 14th, we search. What is the goal of searching? Finding. How are we going to do this process? By the light of the candle. So how are we going to do that? So we find the word finding in one context is derived from finding in another context, from one place in the Bible to another place in the Bible. And there we're going to make an analogy, and we're going to go from finding to finding, and from finding to searching, from searching to searching, and from searching to candle. So this is how it works. It is written here at Exodus 12:9 that 7 days leaven, chametz, shall not be found in your houses, right? It's interesting. It could have said, for 7 days there shall be no chametz in your houses. But the Torah said, for 7 days, chametz shall not be found in your houses. So that's what invites this rabbinic exegesis, this rabbinic hermeneutics that is going on here, because it's, in a sense, it's an extra word. It didn't have to be said that way. And it is written there at Genesis 44:12 in the story of Joseph and his brothers, And he searched, right? So this was the steward of Joseph that he sent after he hid. Remember the story of Joseph and his brothers. They sold him into slavery. He ended up becoming the second in command to Pharaoh in Egypt. Eventually there was a famine, and the brothers went down into Egypt to get food for their family. Joseph recognized them. They didn't recognize Joseph, and he tested them to see if they had changed in character since when they had sold him into slavery. How does he do that? By sort of setting up a crime, as it were, as if the youngest brother, Benjamin, had stolen a silver goblet. Obviously, he didn't do it, but it's like, Joseph frames him, as it were, in order to test how his other brothers will respond to that situation. So they hid the silver goblet in the bag of the youngest brother, Benjamin, and then it says about Joseph's steward, and he searched, starting with the eldest and ending with the youngest, and the goblet was found in Benjamin's sack. And so the word finding in this verse is connected to searching in that same verse by the juxtaposition, as the verse says, and he searched and it was found. So now we have a verb. So first, the word find, the verb find or found, exists here in our commands of Passover. Over there in this verse in the Joseph story, search and find are found together in one verse. So now we have a linkage, and now the linkage continues. And searching is going to be connected to nerot, to flames, or to candles, right? It's a plural, the lights of a candle, the lights of a flame. And how is that going to be? It's going to be connected with a verse from the prophet Zephaniah. So we don't quote Zephaniah so often. Definitely a hardcore prophet who brought a tough message at a time when in the kingdom of Israel there was rampant idolatry. It was great, great evil. God was really angry about it, and he sent the prophet Zephaniah to tell the people that they are sinning greatly, and God is going to come and wipe them out. Okay, so God is sending strong, strong message. Hold on a second. I close that, but let me get it open again. Zephaniah chapter 1. Here it is. Right, so we're going to go to verse 12, but just to set up Zephaniah. So it says, the word of the Lord came to Zephaniah, son of Cushi, son of Gedaliah, son of Amariah, son of Hezekiah, during the reign of King Josiah, the son of Ammon of Judah. And God said, I will sweep everything away from the face of the earth, declares the Lord. I will sweep away man and beast. I will sweep away the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea. I will make the wicked stumble, and I will destroy mankind from the face of the earth, declares the Lord. Now, he's really not talking about all of mankind. That's not going to happen again in the sense of Noah's flood, right? The flood in the time of Noah. What he's really saying is in the next verse, I will stretch out my arm against Judah, right? So this is the kingdom of Judah, and against all who dwell in Jerusalem, and I will wipe out from this place every vestige of Baal. So Baal is one of these gods that the idolaters were worshiping. It's considered a great, great evil. God, it's right there in the Ten Commandments. God does not put up with idol worship. All the more when a Jew engages in idol worship, and the Jews in the kingdom of Judah were doing that. So the prophet comes and he's warning them that it's going to be bad. A bunch of verses of warning, and then at verse 12, it says, at that time, I, God, will search Jerusalem with lamps. Right? So when God is coming to search in Jerusalem for all of the sins of idolatry, and I will punish the men who rest untroubled in their lees, who say to themselves, the Lord will do nothing, good or bad, right? So God has, been silent, sort of just watching things unfold for a while. The people have been sinning greatly, and now the prophet is coming to warn them. God has been watching, and he's about to unleash his anger, because this kingdom of Israel, this kingdom of Judah, really exists only at the Lord's pleasure. Other places the Lord is not going to be so quick to punish the sin of idolatry, but in Israel, yeah, it's coming, right? The covenant said that if we turn to idols, God will wipe us out, and here it comes. And so it says metaphorically that God is going to go into Jerusalem, right? It's the very center of the Jewish faith. But at that time, the temple was standing. And so that is thought to be an axis mundi, right? The joining place between heaven and earth was the holy temple. And right around the temple, idolatry is going on. God is furious. And so God is going to search out for these sins in Jerusalem with lamps. With lamps. So now it's probably kind of a metaphorical thing. God doesn't need a lamp to search out Jerusalem. God can see everything that's going on. But this is now used as a metaphor that when you're making a careful and exhaustive search, you do that by the light of a lamp. And so that's where the rabbis derive that when we're searching for chametz on the night of the 14th, that we should do so by a lamp. Now, we might have already got there. We went from search to find to lamp. But the Gemara is going to add one more verse. And this is from Proverbs chapter 20, verse 27. The soul of man is the lamp of God. Right? So in the title, I reversed it a little bit for effect. But the way it's worded in Proverbs is that the soul of man, the soul of a person, is the lamp of God. Now, usually when that verse from Proverbs is taught, it's meant to be very beautiful, very inspiring, right? And to say that, every human soul is like a light of God walking around in this world, ready to light up the darkness, ready to share light with others. It's very positive, very strengthening type of image. However, here, the way it's being used is to say that, I always say to you, right, we don't have souls, we are souls. We have bodies. We're riding around in these bodies. However, as we go through a human life, the soul is sort of chained to this human and has very little say in what's going on. Like no say unless the human consults with his true self, her true self, true nature, which is the soul. The human is quite apt to just run off high speed, full speed, in search of its pleasures and its hungers and just getting what it wants, right? Going and coming, buying and spending, laying waste its powers, to paraphrase the poet Stephen Spender, or Wordsworth, I think. So at any rate, the soul doesn't get to say much as the human goes madly dashing around trying to get its food, trying to get what it wants, right? So here the image is saying that, but God knows exactly what's going on in every person. God sees absolutely everything. God sees inside ourselves, into our innermost thoughts, and to really bring that fact home, King Shlomo, right? King Solomon, who wrote Proverbs, is saying to us, and the soul that is riding around inside your body acts like the candle of God to illuminate your innermost parts, right? How does God know everything? God just is omniscient. God can know everything. But the tool that God uses to search out your innermost thoughts, desires, actions, everything that's hidden from all the other people around us is the soul itself. The soul is that spark of God that's inside each of us. And the soul, of course, inhabits the body and can see everything that's going on in the body, the brain, the thoughts, the memories, the desires, the hopes, ambitions, the sins, the scoffing, the mocking, the dismissal, the laziness, every way in which we transgress and fall short, the soul, is right there, seeing it, recording it, and transmitting that knowledge, as it were, directly to the Holy One, right? So yes, the soul of a person is the candle of God in the most positive sense, but also in the most complete sense, and that is that's why we want to be God-loving and God-fearing, right? Because and fear sometimes goes a little further than love. Sometimes, right? Sometimes Fear goes a little further than love. And we really ought to conduct ourselves like God has this personal representative inside of us riding around, checking out everything that we do, called the soul, right? So there we go. But again, that image being used here in this derivation to say that when you're searching out the nooks and crannies of a home, the most hidden parts, because you want to get all the chametz out of there, and we've discussed before that chametz represents arrogance. It represents all those times that we have acted in an arrogant and therefore godless way within our homes. And as Passover comes, we want to rekindle that relationship with our Creator and sweep out the vestiges of all those transgressions and all those instances of arrogance. And when we're going to go search out every nook and cranny of our homes for that, we use a candle. We use a nair, right? We use the flame of a candle, or sometimes translated as a lamp. A lamp. Okay. So that is the derivation. Very good. Hold on a second. Okay, so then the sages also taught, they added to this, so now they've derived that we should use a candle to search out our houses. But lest you think that, a candle is good, but there are other sources of light that might be even better if the whole point is to make sure we search out every part of the house. Well, maybe sunlight is better. Sunlight is much brighter than a candle flame. A candle flame outside on a sunny day, it doesn't compare, doesn't begin to compare. Maybe the sun is better. So then the Gemara inspects, well, what's the situation where you would use sunlight to search for chametz? You might say, well, the sun is always shining on the courtyard, and surely we've dropped some chametz, some bread, some leaven products in our courtyards. So maybe we should search for that by sunlight. But that's pointless, because any bread, says the Gemara, that we might have dropped in our courtyard, the ravens and other birds will be quick to clean it up. And it's really not necessary to search the courtyard for chametz. That's already been cleaned out by the birds and other types of animals. Okay, so what about a portico that has a roof but not walls? Okay, so the ravens and birds are less interested, less apt to come into a portico, but the sunlight certainly gets in through the sides. So perhaps that's where we would use sunlight. And indeed, Rava says, yeah, you can use sunlight to search out a portico for chametz. That's okay. But that's not going to work inside the house. A portico is not the interior of the house. So then the Gemara suggests, maybe we have a skylight. Right, so now sun is coming in through a skylight, might be a lot brighter inside that house than what the candle could put out. And indeed, the area that's lit up by the skylight, much brighter than what a candle could do. But as we've seen, we're supposed to do this search at night, so that skylight's not going to help at night. And even during the day, the area beneath the skylight's going to get a lot of light. But when you get to another room, when you get into the sides of the room, into the corners, especially if there's irregular corners, so then the skylight's not so good. We want a portable light that can get into there. And so the lamp is going to be much better for those areas. So then the sages say, well, what about a torch? What about a torch? A torch is much brighter than a candle. Now, we're thinking ancient world, right? So ancient world, they don't have flashlights, they don't have electric lights, they don't have all these amazing light sources that we have. They don't have that many choices, right? So they have sunlight, moonlight, starlight, those are the natural things, okay? And then if you're going to make a flame, pretty much it's either going to be some kind of candles were even rare, so it's more a lamp, right? So an oil lamp, and that's what we're really talking about, an oil lamp that produces a single flame, the way a modern candle does. Back then, it was an oil lamp that would produce a steady flame on a wick. So that's what an ancient lamp and a candle have in common, is that the wick is producing a single flame. But a torch, much bigger flame, much more light. So you would think that if the goal is to make sure we get all the chametz out of our houses, a torch would be much better, much brighter than a single wick and a single flame. And the sages acknowledge that a torch is much brighter than a lamp. Indeed, there's a verse from the prophet Habakkuk, which says that in the world to come, the righteous, who behaved righteously in their lives, when we get to the Messianic age and they're resurrected, they're going to be glowing with light, right? Hashem, the Holy One, is going to grant them, like a glow, like the righteous will visibly glow. Rays of light will be coming off them. However, the rays of the righteous, before the actual divine presence of the Lord, will be like the rays of a single wick compared to a huge torch, right? So we're not talking so much about the Messianic age. They're just making a comparison between a lamp and a torch, saying that, okay, a torch is much brighter. But you always want to have the right tool for the job. And if your purpose is to search out crumbs of chametz, that have been carelessly dropped during the year in the nooks and crannies of your home, it turns out, now we're getting practical, that a torch is not the best tool for the job, right? Why? Because, first of all, you want to get to the nooks and crannies. Like, the torch doesn't go there. It's too big. It's too unwieldy. Bits of flame are dripping off it. You're going to be worried that you're going to set your house on fire when you bring it near the walls. I mean, maybe you have thatch in that roof or other stuff. Like, the torch is too big, too bright, too dangerous a light. Plus, right, it's not like a flashlight. You can have a very powerful flashlight. Okay, what you aim it at is lit up, and what's behind it, is not lit up. So it's easy to focus on the part that you want lit up. But a torch is not directional like that. A torch is omnidirectional. So if you put the torch between you and what you want to inspect, there's like this huge light, in front of your eyes that's kind of blinding, and it doesn't help you to see into that corner where you want to put it. So in fact, a big, unwieldy, super bright torch is not the right tool for the job. Much better to go around at night when it's quiet and peaceful and people are home, as we learned before, using a lamp, because that is the right tool for this job. We return to our Mishnah, where it said that any place that one normally doesn't take chametz doesn't require searching on the night of the 14th of Nisan. Okay, so when it says any place that one normally doesn't bring chametz during the year doesn't require searching, so what does any place come to include? The Gemara tells us. So any place, what does it come to include? The Gemara answers that it comes to include that which the sages taught in a baraisa. The upper and lower holes in the wall of a house that are difficult to use, right? So maybe you have like a hole in the wall, right? They didn't have so many, like built-in shelves or IKEA shelves. Furniture was much more sparse in ancient times. But one thing that they did use for storage, because they had much thicker walls, and then they would make hollows in the wall and use that for storage. But if it was a very high hole in the wall or a very low hole in the wall, well, it's very unlikely that food was going to end up going into those holes, so you don't need to search out those high and low holes. Likewise, you don't have to search a veranda roof, a closet roof, a cowshed, chicken coops, a storehouse for straw, a wine cellar, which we're going to come back to, and a storeroom for oil, which we'll also come back to. All these do not require that a search be conducted. And Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, a bed that divides inside a house and a space, separates the bottom of the bed from the floor, requires a search, and there might be leaven beneath it. Okay, so Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, if you've got a bed that's raised off the floor and there's space beneath the bed, that wasn't always the case. Sometimes they just had bedding on the floor. But if you had an elevated bed, so you had to search under the bed because food could end up there, per the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Okay, so now, but mostly what we've done is exclude places, high and low holes, the very top of a closet, the veranda roof, the storage shed where we keep straw. Exactly. Why are we going to be bringing bread there? We're not taking our meals there. There's no reason why breadcrumbs would end up in those areas. Under a bed could end up there, might get swept there by mistake. So it makes sense that we would want to search that out. But that's the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. So apparently the Baraisa didn't require searching under the bed. So then we get a contradiction immediately from a different Baraisa, where it says that with regard to a hole in the wall that is between a house belonging to one person and a house belonging to another, right? So like they made holes in their walls for storage, but they maybe share a pretty thick wall, so they can make those holes on either side. But maybe those holes actually went all the way through the wall, and it's like you have, a kind of joint storage area in this thick wall that divides two houses. So if you have such a hole, says this Baraisa, okay, so this neighbor searches to the point that his hand reaches in the hole, and that neighbor searches to the point that his hand reaches. And as for leaven that might have been found in the rest of the hole, okay, so the people just render it null and void in their heart. In other words, they don't have to search so far, like beyond where their hand goes. Why? Because how did leaven get beyond where their hand would go? It's not going to get that far. It's only going to go where their hand might have been. So that makes sense. And also in this other Baraisa, it says, and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, a bed that divides the inside of a house with wooden stones placed under it, and space separates the bottom of the bed from the wooden stones beneath it, does not require searching. So that seems to contradict what Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel said in the first Baraisa, that we do have to search under the bed. So we've got two contradictions with respect between these two Baraisas with respect to, do we need to search under a bed, and do we need to search the holes in the wall? The Gemara immediately answers, La Kasha, not a difficulty. These contradictions are easily reconciled. With respect to holes in the wall, okay, if they're high or low, we don't have to search them. But if it's in the middle somewhere where it's handy and practical to use, sure, we have to search in there. How much do we have to search? As far as we can reach, that's plenty. And with respect to a bed, if it's right on the floor, if it's a low bed, okay, then we don't have to search it, because how's anything going to get under there? But if there's a space between the bed and the floor, then we do have to search. So that really was La Kasha, no difficulty to reconcile those two Baraisas. But then we get another Baraisa that says, because it said in the first one that we read, that you don't have to search in the wine cellar or the oil storage cellar. And now we have a different Baraisa that says, wine storages do require searching, oil storages do not require searching. So now we've seen that one Baraisa says we do have to search the wine cellar, and another one says we do not have to search the wine cellar. And how do we reconcile those? Well, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a place where there's a host who often has guests for meals, right? So it could be a home where they host, could be an inn, could be a restaurant type of place, but anywhere where there's going to be people coming for dinner, right? So the reason we have to search out the wine cellar is because the host never knows how much wine is going to be needed for a meal. Sometimes you could have 10 people and they drink 1 jug of wine, and sometimes you have 10 people and they drink 5 jugs of wine. You can't tell. So he might just start with 1 jug and then have to return to the wine cellar. And then when he returns, he might be carrying some bread that he was bringing to the table, or some food with leaven in it. It might, still be in his hand when he ran off to get some extra wine and bring it in the same trip. And he might have dropped some crumbs in the wine cellar when he did so. With oil, how is it that we don't have to search out the wine cellar in either Baraisa, the oil cellar in either Baraisa? Why? Because 10 people are coming to dinner. You have no idea how much wine they're going to drink. But 10 people coming to dinner, you have a pretty good idea of how much oil they're going to consume, what you're going to need for the cooking, what they might need on the table as some kind of seasoning or to dip their nice bread in it. You have a good idea how much oil is going to be needed, different than wine where you don't know. Since you know how much oil is going to be needed, you're not going to be making trips while you're serving the dinner to the oil cellar the way you will be making trips possibly to the wine cellar. Okay. And then in terms of the Baraisa that said that we don't have to search out the wine cellar, well, as we'll see at the end of this page, we're not going to really go into it, there's a disagreement about how much you have to search out the wine cellar. Is it just the first row of jugs, the top row of jugs? Is it the type of cellar where you're only bringing out, whole jugs that you wouldn't be going there, or whole barrels? It's like more like deep storage of the wine. That's not the kind of place where you would be going during a meal, while you're still carrying food to bring to the table. Which kind of wine cellar is it? Those are the kinds of conditions that would affect whether we need to search it out. The principle is we don't need to search out places where during the year, very typically, no bread ever goes into that location. So then we don't have to worry about it during our search on the night of the 14th of the Hebrew month of Nisan. Other places like this. So Rabbi Chia says that beer storage in Bavel is like wine storage in Israel. So in the Jewish communities in Babylonia, apparently they drank much more beer than the communities in Israel. So they would treat the beer storage with the same idea that one during a meal might rush off to the beer storage while still carrying some food. So we have to search out the beer storage. Rav Chisda says with regard to fish, we're going to have a similar principle. If what we're storing there is little fish, containers of like herring and stuff, okay, so they might run out at the dinner party and we might have to, while we're in the middle of bringing food, we'll run off to the herring storage and get some more herring to bring to the table. But if it's a kind of storage where we're keeping large fish, the kind of fish that would feed 10 people, so we're not going to need to go into that storage during the dinner to get another fish, We have a good idea of how many whole salmon are going to be needed for a dinner party. So that kind of a large fish storage, we wouldn't need to search out the chametz. If you have questions and comments, please put them in. Maybe I can help out and address them at the end of class, and I'm approaching the end in not too long of a time. Okay. Rabba Bar Rav Huna says with respect to salt and candles, that's an area you have to, where you store salt and candles. There you need to search for bread because same idea. During a meal, you might be carrying food and we need more salt, we need more candles, and you're carrying that with you when you go to get more salt or candles, so you have to search those areas. And Rav Papa says the same with the wood storage and the place where you keep dates, because you might need more wood for the fire or more dates for the table at your dinner party. We have a Tosefta that says that with regard to the holes in the wall, we don't need to stick our hand in a hole in the wall in order to search it out for chametz, right? So before the Baraisa said that, if we have a hole that connects with our neighbor's place, or even, presumably even if it's not the neighbor's place, if it's just a hole in the wall, we stick our hand in as far as the hand can reach to search out for chametz, because we might have, stored stuff there during the year and breadcrumbs might have fallen into it. However, the Tosefta says we don't stick our hands into a wall because of danger. What kind of danger? Scorpions. There might be scorpions in the hole in the wall. We don't want a person, sticking in, feeling around, looking for breadcrumbs, and all of a sudden, poor person gets stung by a scorpion. But then the Gemara asks, well, wait a minute, whoa. If there's a danger of being scorpions in that wall, why are we saying that he doesn't have to search for chametz on account of that he might, get stung by a scorpion now? The fact is, if there's a danger of scorpions, he never would have used that for storage in the first place. So the reason we don't have to search for chametz there is not the danger now, it's the ongoing danger that would have kept us from ever using that for storage. We wouldn't use it because it's dangerous. Says the Gemara, yeah, but maybe what you're using is the front of the hole where there's no danger, you can see what's in there. And while you were using that area for storage, maybe some bread kind of tumbled deeper into the hole, and so there is leaven in there. But says the Tosefta, you don't have to go searching for it if there's going to be a danger now, but not because there's no possibility of there being chametz in there. If it's really on account of the danger, presumably you're not going to search it because of the danger, but you will nullify in your heart. You'll make that recital we talked about yesterday and the day before, saying that if there is chametz in there, I declare it null and ownerless as the sand, as the dirt of the earth, and it's not mine, and I don't possess it, and it's not chametz in my possession. Right? You want to search it out, but you're not going to search out where there's danger. Okay. And then somebody says, well, wait a minute. Isn't it naturally nullified if it's like deep in a wall? Isn't that the same? Don't we have a teaching elsewhere that if there was chametz under a rock slide, so we don't have to go looking under the rock slide, because the fact that rocks tumbled over this chametz means it's like already been removed, right? It's like it's been destroyed. It's been removed from our possession because it's now covered by a rock slide. So says the Gemara, says, okay, yes, if it's under a rock slide, it's already been removed from our possession, but there's an exception to that where, if it's not so deep in the rock slide that a dog could go sniff it out and go retrieve that food, then it's not really under the rock slide, right? And likewise, if it's in the hole and it's accessible, then it really is in our possession. And we do need to nullify it if we're going to say that it's dangerous to stick our hand in there, but there actually might be chametz in there, so we have to make sure that we nullify it. Now, with respect to this idea of encountering danger when we're performing the mitzvah of searching for chametz in our homes, the Gemara asks, wait a minute, don't we have a teaching from Rabbi Elazar who said that one who is on the path to perform a mitzvah, one who is engaged in the process of performing a mitzvah, of performing a commandment, right? Doing what God told us to do, like literally, right? When it's one of God's literal commandments, and it says in the Torah, right, you will search out the leaven in your homes and remove it so that no leaven will be found there during the 7 days of the festival of matzah. So we're fulfilling God's commandments. So Rabbi Elazar said that when a person is engaged in fulfilling a commandment, he's protected from harm, right? There's an extra measure of protection that we will be preserved from danger when we are literally engaged in the activity of performing a mitzvah, or even on the path to it. Like we're on the road so that we can go to a place to perform a mitzvah. So we're going to be protected throughout that journey when we're on the way and when we get there and while we're doing the mitzvah. So if that is so, why are we worried that a scorpion is going to sting our hand when we reach in the wall looking for chametz? Aren't we going to be protected from harm while we are engaged in the act of performing a mitzvah? So Rav Ashi says, but what'll happen is, if he's going to go search in that hole looking for breadcrumbs so that he can search them out and remove them and nullify them for Passover, he might, some people who are doing this might also think to themselves, what else fell in this hole? I haven't looked in this hole all year, but now that I'm going to go search out all the holes, I remember that there was a sewing needle. The needle is the example that's used here, but it could be anything. It could be like, I dropped some coins. I hid some money in the hole. Maybe I dropped some other coins. Maybe I dropped some other valuable thing in that hole. So now he's got mixed motives, right? He's searching out the chametz in that hole, but he's also searching out for what other objects he might have lost during the year. Maybe he even remembers that he lost something in the vicinity of this hole. So now he is both performing the mitzvah and just doing something that, is for his own purposes, not for a mitzvah purpose. So maybe there he's not going to be protected from harm because he's added his own motivation for reaching his hand in the hole. So the Gemara objects to this line of reasoning because haven't we learned elsewhere that if somebody is performing the mitzvah, performing the obligation of giving money to charity, right? So we do that because we're told to give money to charity. We're told to give tzedakah. But one might think to himself, well, I want to make sure that I end up with a place in the world to come, right? That I get a good place in the next world. And so I'm going to give charity now just to make sure, not only because I've been commanded, but because I believe, in the afterlife and in all these, infinite number of levels in the world of souls. And I want to secure a better place for myself there. So that's why I'm giving to charity. Or a person might give to charity because their relative, the Gemara here says the person's child, his son, is ill and he wants the child to live. Right? He might be endangered in some way and he's going to give charity just to preserve the child. So again, it's a much more understandable motivation. Doesn't sound selfish at all. But it's not just for the purpose of fulfilling God's will and fulfilling the commandment of giving to charity. So do we lose our measure of protection when we have these alternative reasons for giving to charity? No, not at all. In fact, the Gemara has said elsewhere that a person who gives money to charity for any reason whatsoever, even if it's so that he looks good in front of his neighbors, like, oh, he's a guy who gives a lot of money to charity, and it's a totally selfish and image-based motivation for giving to charity. Nevertheless, this person is considered righteous and gets the full reward for giving to charity. We learned elsewhere that one who does mitzvahs for the wrong reasons will eventually come to do mitzvahs for the right reasons. One who gives to charity for the wrong reasons will eventually come to give to charity for the right reasons. And the fact that he might want to secure a better place for himself in the world to come or secure the healing of a loved one, good, no problem, as long as he gives the charity. Why? Because the one who receives the charity could care less what the giver's motivation is. He's just so glad to be saved from poverty or from starvation or from ignorance if the charity is to help promote Torah learning. Whoever's benefiting from the charity is so happy to get it, doesn't matter what the giver's motivation is. So the fact that he might have some alternative motivation when he's reaching his hand in the hole shouldn't matter. He should still be protected from danger, according to Rabbi Elazar's teaching, if indeed we are protected from danger when we're engaged in the act of doing a mitzvah. So then, where does it say? Okay, and so I'm just going to skip to. So the answer that's given is a verse is cited from the book of Samuel, and the answer is yes, we are protected when we're performing mitzvahs, but we're not protected from everything. We're not going to be protected from a commonplace danger, meaning, if you're delivering, food to the hungry, right? Like there's a beautiful charity that we participated with here in LA called Our Big Kitchen, where people come together. We love those guys, and we put beautiful, healthy meals together, and then we deliver them to the homeless. Or Tomchei Shabbos, who delivers beautiful Shabbos meals to people who couldn't afford to have a beautiful Shabbos meal. Okay, so you're delivering one of these meals. You're engaged in feeding the poor. Fantastic. Do you just step in front of a bus on the street? Do you step in front of a speeding car? Do you walk through don't walk signs? No, you're not going to be protected from commonplace danger that with the least amount of common sense you could have avoided. You're going to be protected from danger that you couldn't have foreseen, from danger that's beyond your control. Even so, it can happen. It's an extra measure of protection. It's no guarantee. We still have to be cautious when we walk around in this world and exercise our common sense. And from where do we learn this? Because the prophet Samuel, who anointed the first king of Israel, Saul, and then later saw that Saul was a failure as a king, and then anointed David to be the replacement king. And Samuel says at 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 2, and Samuel said, "How will I go? And Saul will hear and kill me." And God said, take in your hand a calf and say, I have come to offer a sacrifice to God. So even when God himself issued the command, right? It's not just that Samuel read that he should do this mitzvah, this commandment in the Torah, and then he went to do it. Like God actually spoke to Samuel and said, do this. And Samuel said, but if I do that, God, Saul will try to kill me. And God actually made an adjustment and told him how to handle it. Didn't say, well, you're doing my will, so don't worry about it. He said, okay, so this is the way we're going to handle it. Obviously, it's not that Saul is more powerful than God, but nevertheless, going against the will of a king to depose that king, kings are not going to respond well to that, and one is going to endanger his life, no matter how righteous his motivation and even his actuality may be. So, we do get an extra measure of protection when we're involved in a mitzvah, but it's not so much protection that we're going to be saved from commonplace danger. At this point, I'll mention there's a beautiful tradition that people have. Look at this dollar, folded up special. What is this? This is called a mitzvah dollar or a shliach dollar. What does this mean? So we have a tradition. It's a custom. It's not universal, but it's quite common, that if your friend is going on a trip, so whenever we go on a trip, there's a little bit of extra danger in a person's life, particularly if they're going to fly across an ocean. I mean, anytime you get into an airplane, there's a bit of extra danger. Anytime you go on a journey, there's a bit of extra danger in your life. So when you're going on a trip somewhere, maybe you're going on vacation, maybe you're going for business, you're not necessarily going on some kind of a mitzvah mission. But if your friend is going on some kind of a journey and you give him $1 and you say to him, when you get to your destination, give this dollar to someone who needs it. Give it to the poor. Give it to a homeless person. Give it to a hungry person. Right? So now the person going on a trip is your emissary. He's your agent to deliver this charity that you entrusted him with to the homeless person that he's going to encounter at his destination. Now, he has to fulfill his agency, right? You can't just take the dollar and forget about it. That's why we fold it special. This is a nice way to do it. God is one. It says, in God we trust, and one. So when he sees this in his wallet, this oddly folded dollar, it's going to remind him that, when I get there, I got to give this dollar to a homeless person. But now that he's acting as your agent to fulfill this mitzvah of giving money to charity, so he has that extra measure of protection during his journey. So when you have a friend going on a trip, a loved one going on a trip, give them $1, specially folded. This is a nice way to do it. And tell them they have to give that to a needy person when they get there, and then you're giving them an extra measure of protection on their journey. It's a beautiful teaching. We're going to skip that, and I'm almost done. And then the sages will derive some further proofs that one is protected not just when they're en route to going to do a mitzvah, but also when they return, right? So it's the whole journey of doing the mitzvah. When you're engaged in a mitzvah journey, a mitzvah mission, you get protection both on the going and the coming. Deriving that, showing how one is protected both in the going and the coming home, they talk about the pilgrimage of going up to Jerusalem. And so while we're on the subject of making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, we have two very quick, beautiful teachings about Jerusalem and what it was like. And it says, apropos of the ascent to Jerusalem for a festival and the performance of a mitzvah with ulterior motives, the Gemara cites that which Rabbi Avin bar Rav Ada said that Rabbi Yitzchak said. He said, due to what reason are there no fruits of Ginosar which were of the highest quality growing in Jerusalem? Right? So there was another part of Israel where the most beautiful fruit would grow in the north of Israel. And so this rabbi is saying, Jerusalem is the spiritual center of the world. why didn't God arrange so that in the most beautiful city, in the spiritual center of the world, there should also be the tree with the most beautiful fruits? Why do those trees only grow somewhere else in Israel? Answer, why is Jerusalem not graced with such beautiful produce? The reason is so that the pilgrims who come to Jerusalem would not say, if we had ascended to Jerusalem only to eat the fruit of the Ginosar, Dayenu, it would have been sufficient for us. Now, Dayenu, we sing at Passover, and we say, if God had taken us out of slavery in Egypt, but had not brought us to Mount Sinai and given us the Torah, which it's the greatest gift that anyone could have given us, but if all he did is rescue us from slavery in Egypt, Dayenu, it would have been enough for us. But he did take us out, and he gave us the Torah. But if he gave us the Torah and had not given us, manna to eat for 40 years in the wilderness, Dayenu. But he did give us that. And so it's a song of gratitude. And it would have been enough if he just gave us one thing, but he gave us another. And it would have been enough if he gave us that, but he gave us another. Dayenu, Dayenu, Dayenu. It would have been enough for us. So it's like we're teaching us to be grateful. But you got to be grateful for the right things. And the rabbi is saying, people said that they went up to Jerusalem because it was so beautiful and there was such great trees to eat there. Or the other examples, why were the hot springs of Tiberias? Why are they located in Tiberias? Why aren't they in Jerusalem? So that the pilgrims who go to Jerusalem wouldn't say after they left Jerusalem, if we only went to Jerusalem to experience the hot springs, Dayenu, would have been enough for us. No, it would not have been enough for us. Right? The reason to go to Jerusalem is not for beautiful and tasty fruit or for comfortable hot springs or for any other of the wonders that are all around the Holy Land. The reason to go to Jerusalem is to come as close as you can to the divine presence. Right? There's something about Jerusalem. It is the spiritual height of the world. Even though the temple is gone 2,000 years, there's something of that, that heightened spirituality there. And that's what makes Jerusalem, one of the top tourist destinations in the world. Because you don't have to be Jewish. You don't have to be this. You don't have to be that. Everyone who goes there feels it. There's something special about Jerusalem. And yeah, there's great food there, and yeah, there's nice nightlife, and yeah, there's beautiful parks, and yes, there's wonderful walks and historic monuments and great tour guides. But what you go to Jerusalem for is to connect with the source of your soul. And if you don't go there for that, then nothing else is Dayenu. Nothing else should be enough for us. It's only to go there for that. The rest of our page is taken up with the sages deriving when you do go search out the chametz in your wine cellar, and there's a disagreement between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel about how many rows and how we measure the first 2 rows, and are we talking about the 2 rows going up or 2 rows going in, near the door, around the door, just exactly how do we search out our wine cellar. So if you're curious about that, read the rest of today's daf. That's what I've got for us today. Let me check your comments and questions. I see already we had a question about the shirt. That's AT merchandise that helps support our nonprofit. We've actually been selling quite a few of these Let's Light Up the Darkness and also light it up with the Hanukkah menorah, the Grateful Yid shirt, also very popular, the Wisdom Pillow, Baruch Hashem, which I only just designed that a few weeks ago. And we launched it, really, I think just the week before, not even 2 weeks ago, like a week and a half ago. And it's been going gangbusters. People love that Baruch Hashem shirt. All these shirts, and now they're all in long sleeve and women's sizes and kids' sizes and sweatshirts and mugs and great, great gifts for everybody. They'll be so happy. They're really comfortable and practical and good-looking gifts. Those are all available at shop.accidentaltalmudist.org. Okay, questions and comments. I've been running long. I apologize. Every man who owns land must go up for the pilgrimage festivals, but who does not own land is not obligated. I never heard this. Is this an actual Second Temple practice? Asks Lynn. I haven't researched that halacha, not ready to answer. Sharon, yeah, I had the same question. Isn't beer itself chametz? Yeah, beer is chametz. We don't drink beer at Passover. So what did they mean that in terms of searching out the beer cellar is like searching out the wine cellar? Perhaps, what's going on there is that, you're not going to have any beer. Maybe you're going to sell your beer to a non-Jew. You're going to, definitely wall that off, put a mechitza, a barrier there. But nevertheless, you have to search out that cellar because people end up, going there. And like before you've sold your chametz, before you've sold the beer itself, you might have to search around the crumbs. I'm not sure what they mean by that, but great question. Chaim said they made beer out of dates and fruit. Thank you, Chaim. There you go, Sharon. They didn't make their beer out of wheat. They made their beer out of dates. I've actually had that. I've had date beer, but I forgot. So thank you, Chaim, for that reminder. Outstanding. And Sharon mentions this story, and this is the story, we'll finish with this, that set off Acher, right? So Elisha ben Avuye, a great, great sage who went bad and ended up going really bad, right? And even helping the Romans persecute the Jews. I mean, terrible. And he was so wise, and there's some of his teachings that we still learn. And he was the Rebbe of the great Rabbi Meir. So one of the ideas, one of the possibilities of what it is that caused Acher to go bad was that he saw a father say to his son, "Go take, shoo away the mother and take some eggs out of the nest." Right? That's like two mitzvahs in one. A son is going to do what his father asked, so that's in the Ten Commandments: honor your father. And it's also a mitzvah in the Torah to shoo away the mother bird when you take eggs from the nest. It's also said that this is the most difficult and the easiest of the commandments to do, and they were both being done at once. The most difficult, to honor your parents, to do that consistently in all your life, and no matter what, that's what makes it difficult. But at any rate, so this boy obeys his father, climbs up on a ladder, shoos away the mother bird, goes to reach in for the eggs, stumbles, fell, and died. So he was engaged in performing two mitzvahs and somehow didn't get that extra measure of protection and died, while he was doing it. And when Acher saw that, he said, "You know what? I don't believe in any of it." And he went bad. That's one idea. It's not necessarily proven that that's what happened. But look, we see in this world that there are people who are engaged in mitzvahs all the time, and somehow, tragedies happen to them, right? Tragedies befall the righteous in this world. And that's because in this world, God's justice is not revealed fully the way it will be in the time to come and in the Messianic age. We don't understand why the wicked prosper sometimes and the righteous suffer, though by and large, the righteous are rewarded and the wicked do eventually fall. Nevertheless, we certainly see exceptions to that. So, I can't answer the question. God's ways are mysterious. I will say that if there was perfect justice all the time, well, then God would not be hidden, right? And leading a life of faith would not require faith. And to some extent, we would lose a measure of free will if the world was organized like that. The world is not organized like that. And part of God's hiding is that there is apparent injustice in this world. But when we leave this world, I have complete faith that we'll come to understand what the apparent injustice was all about. And we'll see that God had a good reason for everything that God does. That's what I've got for us tonight. May you be blessed in all your ways. We won't have to be searching out chametz in our homes, for several months, right? Passover's in the springtime. But now that we're learning these teachings, not a bad idea to think to ourselves from time to time, when I come back and search this room that I'm sitting in right now in the springtime, and I ask myself, When and how was I arrogant in this room that I would like to remove the traces of that arrogance in the same way that I remove the chametz from the floors and corners? If we think about it now, maybe we'll avoid those transgressions of arrogance, and our learning will have real practical impact in our lives and our relationships with our loved ones with whom we live. Have a great night and a great week.